guys think the internet has ruined video games? I feel like it has. I think the internet ruined video games, man. In a couple of different ways. Like how DLCs, when DLCs first came out, they weren't even DLC. They were just like extra content, not downloadable content. You wouldn't just download it. You would actually have to go to the store and buy it on a disc, and it was an expansion pack. So you would get a full game, and then if it sold well enough, they would come out with a little bit more stuff, like a whole nother set of missions or something, or a new bunch of levels, and it was awesome, you know. But then the internet came along, and they started calling it DLC. I remember when it first came out, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what it stood for. And I first started hearing about it when I had my Xbox 360. DLC started becoming a big thing. Now, games are coming out, and they like the DLC is pre-planned. And it doesn't feel like an extra thing. It feels like something that got taken away. You know? And maybe it's because video games haven't gone up in price in like 20 years. Video games for the newest consoles and the newest games always come out at $60, and that's been true forever. And I feel like I would rather just pay more for the game and get the whole thing, you know? But now they can release it bit by bit. They can release games not fully completed. Like you guys know about the Anthem and Fallout 76 games, how they were just like, they got ripped apart and trashed by everybody when they first came out because they were incomplete, and it's because they knew that they could fix it through the internet. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think the internet should really excuse that, but it does make it possible. Some people are definitely going to disagree with this, but multiplayer, online multiplayer, I think that did a lot to ruin video games too. Because it took the focus away from single player, and the reason I said that a lot of people will disagree is because some people only play multiplayer games. Like they'll buy Call of Duty and Madden, and they'll play it online just non-stop. Or not non-stop, but that's the only thing they play. They don't play anything else. They just play the online multiplayer. So, you know, there's value in it for many people, and they love to play multiplayer games, but man, I miss good single-player games. Like Halo when it first came out. And that had multiplayer, but it was the single player, it wasn't neglected like games are now. The single player gets neglected a lot of the time. And that wasn't the case. Every once in a while, there's a game that comes out that doesn't fit this description at all. And the number one example I can think of is God of War from 2018. That game, I've said before that game might actually be my favorite video game of all time, period. I really, really love that game. There was nothing missing. There was nothing taken out of it. And then the last point about how the internet has ruined video games that I wanted to bring up is microtransactions. God of War has none of that. No microtransactions. They just made a great game and put it out, and it wasn't missing anything. And I don't think it ever got a DLC at all, with the small exception of adding the new game plus, which I love. I've played through the story multiple times, and now I've got like more hack silver than you can ever really even spend, more experience points than I'll ever really even spend. I've got almost all the abilities unlocked. I think there's one more upgrade for the Blades of Chaos that I haven't gotten yet. I don't know where you go to get that. You probably have to beat the Valkyries or something on Muspelheim, that one Valkyrie. So I think you probably get I'm not sure where you get that last Chaos Flame. But yeah, there's one more upgrade for the Blades of Chaos I haven't gotten yet, and then the abilities that you unlock after that for the blades. And maybe that should be what I want to do in that game. Is go get the Blades of Chaos final upgrade. But yeah, anyway, video games being ruined by the internet, man. Microtransactions. I think a lot of people really hate microtransactions. And I can't necessarily be against them, but I've never spent money on one, and I just personally hate them. And I wouldn't go as far to say that I would make them not exist, or say that video game companies shouldn't use them, but I can definitely say that if I was to make a video game, even if I stood to make a lot of money from microtransactions, I wouldn't be able to bring myself to actually put them in there. They just feel dirty. They feel scummy. I feel like, I don't know. Should they be allowed to do it? Yeah, I guess so. But and then one thing about the microtransactions is that a lot of them are set up to be like gambling, like you're spending real money and you don't know what you're gonna get. And you might get, you know, like some pair of shoes or some like generic thing that nobody really wants, but you're going for the thing, you know, big bucks, no whammies. But then boom, you get hit with the little pair of shoe whammy. And I think it was the internet that did it. The internet is what makes all of it possible. Online multiplayer, DLCs, where they just rip parts out of the game and then sell it back to you. It's just what it feels like, man. I feel the quality went down. The quality went down. The single player campaigns went down. Dude, what was it? Black Ops 4? It was so multiplayer focused that not only did the single player get neglected, it got totally removed. It just wasn't there. It was completely absent. And I personally find that unacceptable. Now, if they're still selling a lot of copies of it and people love playing the multiplayer, then okay, good for them, man. You know, Activision or whoever put that game out, Infinity Ward. I don't even know. I should probably be up on this stuff if I'm going to talk about it, but whichever company put out that game, whichever company put out that game, you know, they have their analytics or whatever, and they know that, well, only this small percentage of people were playing the single player anyway. Why would we focus on those players when the vast majority are coming in for the multiplayer and they don't even touch the single player? And that makes sense to me. You know, that's just responding to the market forces and giving your customers what you think that they want. But it's not what I want. So where's the market responding to me? You know what I mean? And I guess it definitely did with God of War, but I wish there was just more. I wish there was more than God of War. I guess there's still some. You know, has the quality really gone down, or am I just remembering all the good games from the past and not remembering the bad ones? Because haven't we always had bad games? Maybe I'm just like biased by the current time, because right now is when I'm living, and when I think about the past, I forget about all of the bad experiences that I had, and I just remember the good ones, like Super Mario World, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Galaxy. Loved that game. And I want to play the new Super Mario Odyssey for the the Switch, but there's like 2 games on there that I would want to get, or 3. Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I've never actually played a Zelda game for more than a couple hours. I don't know why I couldn't get into it. But that Breath of the Wild looked cool, and it got like super good reviews, but that was probably Zelda fans, So I would want to check that one out, and then Super Mario Odyssey, and then of course Smash. Everybody has to have Smash. If you have a Nintendo and you don't have Smash, why did you buy a Nintendo? But those games never go down in price. You have to buy a whole console just to get them. So that's tough. I get, but on the other hand, what I'm talking about here is that the internet ruined video games. But Nintendo, I mean, how has it affected their first party games? I don't know if it has. DLC and other games has kind of ruined it though. And I think like the first example that I can think of, and I didn't even play it to see it myself, was that horse armor in Oblivion, man. Was that the first egregious example of DLC from the video game industry, or just Bethesda itself? I think that was like the first sign of the greed of Bethesda. And now they're just a mockery on the internet. They went from hero to zero. And it's kind of tragic. I was telling my wife, and my wife and I are both big Skyrim fans and Fallout 4 fans, and she played New Vegas and Fallout 3, and I played those a little bit, and I've been playing Oblivion a little bit, but I came in as a fan not too long after Skyrim came out. Skyrim was the one that really blew up for the Elder Scrolls. Like, Oblivion was a big deal, but Skyrim really went like viral, quote unquote. Skyrim was massive. Everybody loved Skyrim. It was their highest selling game like ever. It sold so well that they came out with it like 30 times. How many different versions of Skyrim are there now? I don't even know. A lot. Like over 20 or something. I don't even know. But I love that game. It's a great game. It deserves that. It deserves that treatment. And the more places that it can be played, the more formats that it can be played on, or like consoles or whatever you want to call them, the better, because I want people to play that game. I love that game. And so anyway, I'm in love with that game, to the point that I told my wife, when the Elder Scrolls 6 drops, we're going to buy the most expensive version on the first day, probably going to pre-order it. But now, after some of the debacles that Bethesda's had with their more recent games, and how they've kind of shown their ass on the DLC and all that other stuff, I'm too skeptical to do that now. I gotta wait for a few weeks after the game comes out, a few years from now, or whenever it's finally gonna come. So yeah, has the internet ruined video games? Is it the internet's fault? Not the internet's fault, but did the internet make it possible? Like, am I onto something here? I don't know. I think I'm onto something. I think the internet is what made all of it possible. And yeah, technology in general, man, it does great things. Like, I really love all of the improved graphics. I'm kind of spoiled by the improved graphics now, because when I go back to play older games, it's hard to get into it, man, because I know what's out there now. That's why we gotta bring in these remasters, like they're talking about doing it to Knights of the Old Republic. Man, if they remaster Knights of the Old Republic, I'll buy that on the first day. I played that game a long time ago, and I know for sure that that's a great game. Knights of the Old Republic, man, underrated. And I know how much love it gets on the internet, and I'm still saying it's underrated. That game was awesome. I really like the turn-based style combat. I wanted to buy a Final Fantasy game. They're remaking Final Fantasy VII, and I think I want to get that game. I never played the original on the PS2 or the PS1. I can't remember which one. Probably the PS1. I think it's that old. So I never played it. But it's like a classic, and it has that turn-based style combat, I think, doesn't it? Because I know Final Fantasy is famous for that, for having the turn-based style combat, and I really want to get into it. But yeah, I tried to make this video more focused on a subject, so I can kind of post this on a place, and if you guys found it interesting, you know, go ahead and click subscribe. It's not the only thing that I talk about on here is video games. I just talk about everything. I talk about family, career, personal finance, and just general subjects about life, you know. And I just record this thing on my way to work. I record twice a day on my way to work, and I just started doing it because, you know, there's a lot of wasted time just driving to work for about a half hour every day, and I started about halfway on my way to work this morning, and I'm gonna be starting to do some other types of videos. I'm thinking about finding people who want to talk just about their life, and just to find interesting people like business owners and that kind of thing, and I'm gonna start doing those kinds of videos eventually. if I can get off early enough on a Saturday and have a little bit of free time. It's hard when you have 2 young kids. It's kind of like finding time to play video games anymore, and I think that's a big part of it too, is finding time to play video games. Because, you know, there's still lots of good ones coming out. Like I really love Kingdom Come Deliverance. That game, that is a really interesting game, and I want to play it, but it's the kind of game that you really have to have hours and hours to be able to dedicate to it. You know, you can't just pick up the controller for 20 minutes and play it for a little bit and then put it down and take care of business, make macaroni and cheese for the 5-year-old, you know. Can't do that. You gotta kind of commit a serious amount of time and get into it, to like get immersed and go on quests and that kind of thing. But I just love how realistic that game is. You get hungry, you get tired, you have to take care of all that, you know. You have to take care of your own vitals. You have to go to sleep. You don't get away with anything. If you walk into somebody's house, they're gonna be like, "Hey man, I don't know you. Why are you in here? Why are you in my house?" And I know Worthaby, he was talking about the Witcher 3, making fun of it. Just like, oh yeah, you can just walk into people's house and take their stuff and nobody cares. Nobody cares, whatever. And I know it's kind of funny for a channel with like 16 views total telling you to go subscribe to another channel, but Worthaby, that guy is funny, man. He always makes me laugh. If you like video game reviews, he doesn't give games a rating when he reviews them. He just tells you thumbs up or thumbs down. And yeah, I really like that guy. He's funny. He makes me laugh. But his Kingdom Come Deliverance review is excellent. He doesn't just sit in his car and talk. He actually shows you gameplay and stuff like that. So I think I'm gonna go inside, get on the clock in here, and start pre-tripping my truck, make sure that the oil level is good, let the motor warm up, get my route together, grab some keys that I need, and I'm gonna be on my way. So I gotta shut this down. I'll talk to you.